Rising from the parched earth of ancient Mesopotamia, massive stepped structures known as ziggurats once dominated the skyline, casting long shadows over bustling cities and silent deserts alike. These awe-inspiring edifices, built thousands of years ago, were not merely architectural wonders. They were the beating hearts of cities, sacred bridges between humanity and the divine. To understand the story of the ziggurat is to journey back to the very dawn of civilization, to a place where rivers met and the first cities were born. The land between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, known as Mesopotamia, is often called the cradle of civilization. Here, early societies learned to tame wild rivers with complex irrigation systems, transforming arid plains into fertile fields. As villages grew into cities, people sought to make sense of the powerful and sometimes terrifying forces that shaped their world. They imagined these forces as gods, beings that controlled the floods, the harvest, the sun, and the wind. To honor these gods, and perhaps to win their favor, the inhabitants of Mesopotamia built temples. Over time, these temples became more elaborate, rising ever higher in a symbolic ascent towards the heavens. Thus, the first ziggurats were born, immense terraced pyramids made of mud brick and fired clay, each layer smaller than the one beneath, creating a distinct stepped appearance that soared above the flat landscape. A ziggurat was far more than a building. It was an axis mundi, a cosmic mountain thought to connect the human world below with the realm of the gods above. At the summit of each ziggurat was a shrine, a sacred chamber where priests performed rituals and made offerings, believing that the gods would descend to this high place to receive them. Ordinary people were rarely, if ever, allowed to climb the ziggurat or enter the sanctuary at its peak. The journey upward was reserved for the priestly elite, who acted as intermediaries between mortals and deities. The earliest known ziggurats appeared in the cities of Sumer, in southern Mesopotamia, over 4,000 years ago. The city of Uruk, considered by many to be the first true city in history, boasted a temple complex dedicated to the sky god Anu. The White Temple of Uruk, set atop a high platform, is sometimes seen as a forerunner to the classic ziggurat form. But it was in the city of Ur, centuries later, that the full grandeur of the ziggurat would be realized. The Great Ziggurat of Ur, constructed during the reign of King Ur-Nammu around 2100 BCE, remains one of the best preserved examples. Built to honor Nana, the moon god, its three massive terraces once rose over 100 feet above the surrounding plain. Each level was constructed from millions of sun-baked mud bricks, faced with fired bricks for added strength and protection against the elements. A broad staircase, flanked by imposing walls, led worshippers up toward the sky, a physical embodiment of spiritual ascent. Though the shrine at its summit is long gone, the structure itself endures as a testament to the ambitions and beliefs of its builders. The ziggurat was both a religious center and a symbol of political power. Its construction required enormous resources: laborers to mold and stack bricks, artisans to decorate its walls, and administrators to coordinate the logistics. Building such a monument was a statement of a king's authority and his city's prosperity. The ziggurat proclaimed to all who saw it that here, in this city, the gods were honored, and the king ruled by their favor. Across Mesopotamia, each major city had its own patron deity and its own ziggurat. In Babylon, the legendary Itaminanki Tower, dedicated to Marduk, the city's chief god, reportedly rose to extraordinary heights. Some scholars believe Itaminanki inspired the biblical story of the Tower of Babel, a tale of humanity's attempt to ascend to the heavens. Though little of the original structure remains, ancient texts describe a seven-tiered tower, dazzling with glazed bricks of blue, white, and gold. The function of the ziggurat went beyond simple worship. These towering platforms were thought to be the literal homes of the gods on earth. The Mesopotamians believed that each deity had a spirit that could inhabit their temple, and by building ziggurats, they made a fitting earthly abode for these powerful beings. Inside the sanctuaries at the summit, priests cared for cult statues, performing daily rituals to provide food, drink, and music for the gods. The well-being of the entire city was linked to the proper maintenance of the ziggurat and its sacred routines. Ziggurats also served practical purposes. Their height made them visible from great distances, acting as landmarks for travelers and merchants traversing the vast plains. Some archaeologists speculate that the upper levels may have been used as astronomical observatories, allowing priests to track the movements of the stars and planets, an essential skill for timing agricultural and religious festivals. Despite their imposing size, ziggurats were vulnerable to the passage of time. Built mainly of mud brick, they required constant maintenance. Rain and wind could erode their surfaces, and the flat, unprotected plains offered little shelter from the elements. As dynasties fell and cities were abandoned, many ziggurats crumbled into ruin, their bricks recycled by later generations seeking building material. Yet, even in decay, the ziggurat's legacy endured. The idea of a sacred mountain, a place where heaven and earth meet, resonated far beyond Mesopotamia. In neighboring regions, stepped temples and pyramids appeared, shaped by local traditions but echoing the same longing to reach toward the divine. In ancient Persia, the ziggurat at Shoga Zanbil stands as a rare example outside the heartland of Sumer, testament to the spread of this architectural and spiritual vision. The ziggurat also influenced the stories and myths of later cultures. The biblical narrative of the Tower of Babel, for example, can be seen as a reflection on the hubris of humanity, our desire to ascend to divine heights, and the consequences of overreaching. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, the walls and temples of Uruk are described in loving detail, symbols of both civilization's achievements and its limits. To walk among the remains of a ziggurat today is to stand in the shadow of a lost world. One can imagine the sounds of ancient rituals drifting down from the heights, the flicker of torches illuminating mud brick walls, the solemn procession of priests ascending toward the sanctuary. These monuments remind us that the earliest cities were not just centers of trade and power, but places where people gathered to seek meaning, to honor forces greater than themselves, and to build lasting connections between earth and sky. The engineering of the ziggurats was as impressive as their spiritual significance. Builders faced the challenge of constructing massive structures in a land with few natural resources. Stone was scarce, so they relied on mud brick, readily available but prone to erosion. To protect the lower levels from rain, the outer surfaces were often glazed or covered with layers of bitumen, a natural tar that helped repel water. Drainage systems channeled away runoff, and regular repairs were a part of temple life. Each city's ziggurat reflected its unique traditions and resources. Some, like the Ziggurat of Ur Kurigalzu near modern Baghdad, featured decorative niches and buttresses, while others stood in more austere grandeur. The colors of glazed bricks were chosen for symbolic reasons: blue for the heavens, white for purity, gold for the sun. At times, the uppermost shrine was said to be plated with precious metals or decorated with jewels, catching the light of the rising sun and dazzling all who beheld it. For the priests who served atop the ziggurat, daily life was a blend of ritual and responsibility. They maintained the sacred fires, recited prayers, and presented offerings of bread, beer, and incense. Festivals brought processions, music, and drama as the city gathered to celebrate the cycles of nature and the mysteries of the gods. In times of crisis, drought, invasion, or disease, the people looked to the ziggurat and its priests for hope and protection, believing that the fate of the city depended on the favor of its divine patrons. As centuries passed, the great age of the ziggurats faded. New empires rose and fell, and religious traditions evolved. The Persians, the Greeks, and later the Romans brought different gods and new architectural styles. Yet the memory of the towering ziggurats lingered. Medieval travelers marveled at the ruins, spinning tales of forgotten giants and lost civilizations. Modern archaeologists, sifting through layers of earth and time, have uncovered the foundations of these ancient temples, piecing together the stories of the people who built them. Today, the ziggurat stands as a symbol of humanity's timeless quest to understand the cosmos. It is a monument to faith and imagination, to the power of communal effort, and to the enduring human desire to bridge the gap between the mundane and the divine. In their imposing forms and intricate design, ziggurats remind us that even in the earliest days of civilization, people dreamed big, reaching upward, seeking connection with something greater than themselves, and leaving behind structures that would echo through the ages. From the mud bricks of Sumer to the myths of Babylon, the story of the ziggurat is the story of civilization itself, a tale of aspiration, ingenuity, and the unending search for meaning. As long as their ruins endure, the temples of the gods will continue to inspire wonder, inviting us to look up and imagine the world as it once was, when gods walked among mortals and the ziggurats reached for the stars.